Today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, first I'll start off by talking about that Republican National Convention, some things going on there just real quick. Well, probably not real quick, but I'll talk about that, and then we'll return back to Kentucky issues. As Fayette County Public Schools pays $26,500, that's quite a pretty penny there, to one Ron Clark, who's essentially a charter school advocate. Makes you wonder why they come out against, school choice so much there at the Fayette County Public Schools, and they're paying $26,500 to a man that advocates for kind of the principles that you get with a school choice type agenda. And then finally, we'll go into a few more of the state house races going on around Kentucky. So we'll have all that today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Before I dig down into it, please, as always, make sure you leave a review. Make sure you're following the show. If you're listening to this, make sure you've hit that subscribe button. And also make sure you're telling others to check out the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics from a conservative perspective. You're not going to find too many shows that focus on Kentucky issues from a conservative perspective. You're certainly not going to find a single other one that comes out as often as I do. In fact, I don't think you'll really find too many shows at all that are conservative focusing on Kentucky issues. I only know about 2 or 3 personally, and most of them, not a single one of them, are daily. So this is it. So make sure you're telling others about it, because the more people that listen, the more guarantees this show keeps on going. So make sure, once again, you leave that review too. It helps us share it out there. Well, without further ado, let's get down into it. So I talked yesterday about the actual attempt on Trump, and I kind of dug into some different takes on it. But so far this week, we've been seeing the RNC Convention, and there has been obviously a mixed bag of issues going on up there where I'm a little bit worried about the future of the Republican Party. And it depends on what you view the Republican Party for, what you think the processes should be, how we should do this, right? And so I've always been an advocate of saying, and what concerns me about the future of the Republican Party deals more with the platform side of things, right? So we should be casting a nuanced, a philosophy-full vision for what we believe as a party. And that's what the prior platform was. It was intricate. It talked about economic beliefs and standpoints, and it talked about really kind of casting a vision on a way forward and a philosophy with an endpoint of that. If you follow that to its conclusion, we're going to end up in a much better place. And the platform that they're floating here now, that it looks like they'll be changing to, is not really good at all. It sucks. It's awful. Quite frankly, it's not really anything much in it that deals with the Republican Party issues that have been going on for years. Now, I have some of the newer issues in there that Republicans have kind of adopted onto that I'm glad are being added on. Things such as our educational issues going on within the country, our tax dollars being spent funding kids to be indoctrinated with leftist ideas. Those kinds of issues really taking head on, taking a look at this gender bending type things, mentioning protecting women's sports, those kinds of issues. They're in there, and I agree with they needed to be added on along with the philosophy to go along with it. But there's a lot of things being taken out of it. For an example, there's not a mention. I searched the new platform that's being proposed, did a word search, and the word gun and Second Amendment and the beliefs of the right to own firearms doesn't show up anywhere within the document. That's of some concern to me because, our commitment to the Second Amendment, the Republican Party has always been known as kind of the pro-gun party. I mean, obviously, our history isn't exactly super great on that. Reagan, considered one of the best Republican presidents ever, passed one of the biggest pieces of gun control legislation out there. And then, of course, as well, Trump did do something on the Second Amendment and banning bump stocks that the Supreme Court came along and has said was unconstitutional. So Trump even did unconstitutional things when it came to the Second Amendment. Just being honest here. And so already the Republican Party and was iffy on the Second Amendment. I mean, we just saw McConnell being the architect on a piece of legislation called the Safer Communities Act that would fund red flag gun laws, unconstitutional red flag gun laws throughout the country. And obviously with the attempt just on Trump, we could be worried that we see some sort of reaction from the politics of an overreaction of them saying, well, let's just ban the guns or something like that. And then with taking the Second Amendment out of the platform, it certainly becomes of some concern here. Now, you can also see why that would be worrisome. But the other thing that's been taken out of the platform is a lot of this talk surrounding economic development, which is concerning as, they had one of their speakers was the Teamsters guy. Now, I'm going to personally detach. My concern about the platform is a lot different than, a lot of people have been concerned about some of the speakers that have been at the RNC convention. And I'll dig into that in a second just to explain what those concerns are, why people are concerned. I'm not that concerned about the speakers because I look at the RNC convention every 4 years, a presidential convention, as mainly a dog and pony show that's kind of a campaign, a giant big campaign event for that presidential candidate. And so that means you're going to attract in some people that maybe don't agree with you, and you're going to have them speak because you want to appeal to a broader crowd. I get that. I understand that. We'll talk about those speakers in a second. But when it comes to the actual platform of the party, that should be our utopia document. That should be like, if we could wave a magic wand, this is exactly what we'd want to do in the country. It doesn't mean every single politician is going to adopt line item by line item the party platform, but they should try to progress towards it. What I mean by that is let's say the party platform says on abortion, which has been greatly changed in it. I'll go into that here in a second. But let's say the platform on abortion is no abortion. We're pro-life, right? Except for life of the mother. We do not believe in abortion. Let's say that's the belief. Well, if you go to a Republican running in California, they may not have on their platform no abortion. They may have on their platform a ban after 20 weeks or something like that. Because while that is not exactly the platform before them, it would be an improvement on California's situation in the direction of the National Party platform. So I understand that the platform of the Republican Party won't necessarily be right in line with all candidates' platform. It may not be in line with the president's current platform and belief, as long as he's moving us in the correct direction towards those goals. I understand the politics of the situation. But that is where we're supposed to sit there, looking at the platform and say, here is the perfect world, and the changes that we're seeing are not great. Because when we look at the economic development side of things, gun is the political philosophy of things like, this used to be in the old platform, things like government doesn't create economic opportunities but can only hinder them. That was in our platform. That we don't believe in corporate welfare. That was in our platform. That we don't believe government should be picking and choosing winners and losers. That's out of our platform. And that's really concerning because when you take a look at the issues, the looming issues going on in our country, and I think one of the biggest issues before us is the government spending on top of the rate at which the citizens are taxed. And the government spending and the taxation is large parts due to the fact that government keeps doing things that it shouldn't be doing. Government shouldn't be giving out hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars to companies that make billions of dollars a year and economic incentives for them to do whatever. Everybody should be taxed less, regardless if you're a billion-dollar company or if you're a mom and pop shop or if you're just a person, eking by a living in the middle class. Everybody should be taxed less. Everybody should have those same opportunities. But the nature of these economic development BS is they are taking money out of hardworking Americans' pockets and then giving it to for-profit corporations making massive profits as it is in order to just continue to redistribute wealth to people who, funny enough, at least with the Democrats claim to be doing it, right? And at least they're pretending that they're doing it because it's, for the betterment of they're just going to line the cash money pockets to, those who aren't working or whatever. I mean, we know they still do their corporate handouts too, obviously. But it seems like, it is that with taking that out of the platform, you're giving the green light for Republicans that say, hey, I'm a fiscal conservative, to no longer even, it's not even a requirement to be a fiscal conservative in order to be a Republican. And that's of a lot of concern, because spending, I believe, is our biggest problem. Because spending is at the root of us doing too much in our K through 12. Spending's at the root of our government doing too much in general, getting too involved in our lives. Spending is our problem, coupled with the fact that we have massive debt that might just bankrupt the country soon. And so we have to stop spending. And I don't feel that's fully articulated how they're going to do that in the platform, which leads to the overall fact that the new platform, if it's adopted exactly how it's been floated and wrote as I've seen, it reads like it's wrote by some like 9-year-old high school student. It is not a philosophy document. And I think that's the wrong move. And I know some people would say, no, you write it like it's wrote by, some 9th grade high school student so more people can understand the platform. But you're being ignorant. The average person isn't reading a party platform as they're making a decision, okay? The average person isn't trying to comprehend what the RNC stands for, right? The GOP, what's their party plan? They don't care. They couldn't tell you what's in it. The document is only for those who are working within the party to tell them what they should strive for. That is the point of it. And so that means it should have philosophy in there. It should be well constructed, not look like it was wrote on a napkin with crayons. But the way it's wrote, just the way it's wrote, this new version, it just seems really childish. And that moves on to the abortion side of things. And by childish, I mean, it's just a lot of platitudes. It doesn't make you think. It doesn't make you do anything when it comes down to it. And so on to the abortion thing and the evidence of this, like, not thinking, let's take a look at what they changed abortion to. So it's traditionally had the belief that life should be protected under the 14th Amendment, that we believe life begins at conception. And therefore, if you believe life begins at conception, then they should be afforded the same protection as everybody else. And that, basically we support a federal ban on abortion. That's basically what the platform said when you get down into it. But what they instead cited here, what instead the new position, I'm going to read it to you here. Just try to understand this as best you can, because it's contradictory and it makes no sense. So it says, we believe that the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States guarantees that no person can be denied life or liberty without due process. That the states are therefore free to pass laws protecting those rights. Okay, so what they're trying to argue is that, we believe in the 14th Amendment, so that's why we're kicking it to the states for it to be their job to pass legislation to protect those rights. But that's not how the Constitution works. If you have a right detailed within the Constitution, it is the government's job, specifically the federal government's job even, to ensure that no state or local government, as well as the federal government, encroaches on that right. So if you believe that newborn life, at conception, you now have constitutional right to life, liberty, and freedom without due process, you deserve due process for those who are taken away from you. Well, you can't say that, states are free to protect laws to enforce that. No. It's your job as the federal government to enforce that. That's what it means. This is nonsensical. It's got holes in it a mile wide. And as I said, I understand this may be Trump's ploy to go ahead and bring in as many people as possible. I get that. And his platform may be different than that, individually as a candidate. However, the platform that everybody should strive to, and I know I'm repeating myself here, but should strive to, should be perfect and full of philosophy. It shouldn't be this. It shouldn't be that. And that makes me worried about the Republican Party. It does. Now, I'm not as worried about some of these other things that I know some other commentators are worried about. For an example, the Teamsters head union guy or something, I guess, showed up and he did a speech I would be less worried about his speech if we didn't just strip a whole lot of things about doing cash handouts for economic incentives, because you could take his speech that he gave and you could really read into that a belief that not just economic handouts, but, the Republican Party has always been about, hey, you should leave everybody alone, let everybody have the fruits of their labor, nothing more, nothing less. The idea of freedom is that good things can happen and bad things can happen, and it's your choice. And we're just here to make sure that your choices are your choices. They don't affect other people, and other people don't come in and take away your rights and don't honor your ability to make your own free decisions with your own free will. But this is not a liberty type idea when you think government should be solving problems, which is what the Teamster kind of was pitching and is kind of what the Republican Party platform now is also endorsing. I mean, it reads like the platform, honestly, a lot of the ideas in there, pretty much the same as Bill Clinton, Obama when he first went in. Really? That's it? It's a lot closer to that than it is the old RNC platform, and trust me, I've read them all. So, and then there's another speaker that got some attention, specifically from some of the more conservative people, and that was the RNC had a person named Amber Rose speak, who I'd never heard of her before. I went on to her Twitter. The best I can tell, she's a porn star that also has a some sort of blockchain currency coin of some sort that she pushes called Mova, I believe is what it's called. And I guess she's got an OnlyFans, and she not exactly a stalwart conservative, but that's I understand people attacking over that, but it's okay to have people that would be more traditionally think would be to the left, or that walk of life, or that is an influencer amongst young, or especially normally not voters, or people who, get out the vote efforts typically target, to come out and say, hey, you should vote for Trump, and we'll give you this big national platform at the RNC to come out and say that, because quite honestly, this Amber Rose person's also black. So, you're black, you're a OnlyFans person, you're more to the left, or kind of a porn star. The fact that you're endorsing Trump means more than just a normal run-of-the-mill Republican endorsing Trump. And I get that, and I understand that process. So I'm not going to freak out in the same way. I'm more worried about the platform changes than I am about their speakers, because it's essentially now a campaign event for Trump. I get that. Now, also at the convention, the nomination of JD Vance has happened. McConnell got booed too. Before I move on to JD Vance, McConnell got booed. Fantastic. You would think the Republican Party of Kentucky would go ahead and take note of the fact that everybody hates McConnell. Stop pretending like you love him. I don't even think it's pretending. Stop peddling to his BS. The guy's on his way out. He's old. He's moving on. All of his people can't win elections anymore. They can't win difficult elections. All the people who came up in the McConnell era, when's the last major, big, hard election they've won? Since 2020, have they won a hard one? Have they? So you got, just get rid of them. Stop listening to these people. They're clearly going to drag you down with the base, but, they'll keep listening to them. But anyways, so JD Vance got nominated for the vice president. And realistically speaking, I know some people hate him, some people love him, some people are Realistically speaking, I think he's honestly probably the best we were going to get for a few reasons. So I was worried that Trump, because he's on this big moderate push, he's on this big push of, hey, they're seeing Biden is super crazy, so maybe if I look super duper moderate, and I understand why he's doing it, and for all we know, guys, he could end up coming back right after he gets elected, like a lot harder back right, and would be fine, because, when he ran that first time, I was a little iffy on whether or not he would actually end up being a conservative Republican when he got into office, how would be the effect of his policies. And he proved me wrong. He's proved that he does have some pretty good policies that he puts forward. That's definitely a big improvement over what we could expect from the rest of the Republicans. I mean, come on. What are we going to get? Some neocon that sends us to 4 more wars because of made up WMDs or something? I mean, he's definitely a lot better than what we normally get out of a Republican president. And so, who knows? He could come back right there. But the point is with JD Vance being elected, I was concerned he would pick somebody like a Nikki Haley or even somebody like a Glenn Youngkin, because in a way, once Trump's gone, it's could have been an opportunity, and he used it as this to kind of signal who he wants to take over the party, who can be the heir apparent, who are the young up-and-comers, what direction are we going to move in? And if he puts somebody like Nikki Haley on board, well, she really attracts in some of the older Republicans. And then if, some of the younger, Trumpier Republicans could be convinced to vote for her because she was the vice president, right? As long as she doesn't Pence Trump. But he didn't go with that. He went with JD Vance, who's pretty... definitely not in that direction of being as non-offensive as possible. Now, what's funny about JD Vance is because there's a difference between populism and liberty, and because the establishment likes neither of them, and because JD Vance has kind of shifted between the two, you've ended up in a situation where there's a little bit of every camp that doesn't like JD Vance. So obviously, the super duper Trump people who, let's be honest, they probably really don't have much political philosophy. All they know is that Trump cares about them, so whatever Trump does, Trump's good. And that's fine, and there are people out there that think that way, and they're welcome to vote that way and think that way all they want to, because for them, the proof is in the pudding, and all they know is their life was better under Trump. All they know is he's the first guy to actually care about them. He's the first guy to speak their language, and I get that. 100% understand it. And so those people, some of them don't like JD Vance because JD Vance early on said he was a never Trumper, went out against Trump. You got to understand, those are the populism side. The people who like Trump generally are what we describe as more the populists, meaning that they, much like Democrats, believe that government can be used to do good of some sort, that government reaching out into some areas where maybe it shouldn't is okay under certain situations as long as it goes in their direction. Democrats also believe government can get involved in more things than maybe, it should, but they want it to go in their direction. And there is an argument, there's a good argument, that you need some populism before you can move to full liberty, because you would need to undo the damage. We saw this when Democrats put in place Jim Crow laws. They did an overreach into people's private lives and businesses, basically legally mandating that they have to be racist. And so it wasn't enough to just undo Jim Crow laws, because by that point, government had created a culture and manufactured a culture, and that culture would have remained, and it still would have been created by government. And so then you had to come in with civil rights laws, which some could argue is also an overreach. But to undo the overreach of Jim Crow laws that came from the racist Democrats. And so in that same way, I think a lot of the argument around populism at this point is we got to go in and do some things to go ahead and move people out of the thought process of this liberal thought process that has been built by the Democrats using government in the wrong ways, and now build them to think in a different direction. So then that way, maybe we get to the middle and we can just say hands off, and now government isn't forcing anybody to do anything at all. Or think another way. Government's not overreaching at all. I guess that's kind of the populism thought process. I'm trying to explain as best I can here. And some of you I know won't like the explanation, but I'm just doing the best I can. And so essentially, to leftism, populism is its kryptonite. Is how you undo it. But there's liberty Republicans as well. And a lot of them are purist liberty Republicans. And I've been many times self-described as liberty Republican. I call myself more conservative. I call myself a constitutional Republican, but that leads to being labeled as a liberty Republican by the media a lot of times. And the liberty Republican belief is more of that of kind of like von Mises or Rothbard, really a hands-off government, leave us alone approach to like everything. And so what that means is that when you have somebody like Trump that talks a lot about tariffs and economic manipulation and talks about some of these different things of government getting involved in certain directions, you're going to have liberty people not as comfortable with Trump as obviously populists are good with Trump. That's why you see people like Massey a lot of times. Now, Massey didn't know Ron DeSantis very well, but you saw a lot more of the liberty Republican crowd supporting Ron DeSantis over Trump. I'm just saying that to liberty people, a lot of times they get really caught up in the philosophy of a situation. And so because of that, because JD Vance was a liberty person more so when he was running, he said bad things about Trump. Then he gets elected, and I think what JD Vance believed and ran into was, I need to get some things done. I need to have some friends here. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to be more populist. And maybe he didn't literally say this in his mind, but kind of just over time moved in that direction. I'm going to be more populist because it's easier to achieve those goals than it is my goals right now. And so in that vein, yeah, I like Trump as a president for that reason. One thing we do know is the establishment doesn't like him. The establishment doesn't like him at all, and that's good with me. The establishment doesn't like him, and he at least has some liberty tendencies. He's got some populism. He's got a little mixed bag of both. You know what? It's the best we're going to get, and honestly, if Trump wants to get his policies done, he needs somebody from the legislature to kind of work in the legislature that has rapport with them to get more things passed, to deliver that blind spot that Trump doesn't have so he can get as much done. Because he's got 4 years. Trump's got 4 years, probably 2, to get done as much as he can, because chances are the Republicans will control the House and Senate and he'll have the presidency when he comes in. So he's got 2 years to get as much done as he can, and he needs somebody with some experience and legislation to do that, and JD Vance does deliver that. But I look at everything going on at the RNC, and I look at all this, and I just want to take a second to point out that this is why politicians are not the salesmen of our ideas. Now, the left understands this. The left spends money on convincing people of ideas first, then going to politicians. You see, it's at the national levels. You got the NAACP, you got Planned Parenthood, you got a lot of these Soros groups that their entire goal is to do things like protest about issues, push out media, advertise ideas, not even politicians, just ideas, knock doors for ideas, not even, once again, not just politicians, but ideas, advertise for them. Do actual ad campaigns over those ideas. And the conservative side of things, the Republican side of things, does not do that. Because a lot of times the money is first flowing into the politicians on the right side of thing, and on the left side of thing, it's flowing more so into activist thought process. The people controlling the money on the left side of things understand that their money is better spent convincing the populace of something being a good idea, because then they don't need to put as much in politicians' hands. And instead, politicians have to adopt their viewpoints in order to win, because they have convinced the populace to do it. I see this all the time. This is what's funny. I see this all the time with the legalized marijuana crowd, okay? They'll say all the time, they don't understand why weed won't be legalized in Kentucky, or why it's such a struggle when like 75% of Kentuckians support recreational marijuana. They're like, 75% of people support recreational marijuana. Why won't the politicians just do it? And so they spend all their time and efforts or whatever just yelling at politicians. And what they should be doing is realizing that the 25 or 30% that don't support recreational marijuana make up a large part of the Republican Party base, or the Republican Party primary voters. And so you need to convince the Republican Party primary voters of your ideas if you want to pass it. I'm not saying I support recreational marijuana. I'm just saying that's what they need to do if they want to pass that legislation. But they don't do that. Instead, they just yell at politicians. And I see this all the time. I see people yell at politicians all the time about why they don't agree with them, without ever bothering to try to convince the populace. And this is what has to change. When it comes to things like the Republican Party platform changing, when it comes to things about, what are politicians going to push for, when it comes to things around the side of what is considered moderate. If you're one of those people who think, the RNC bringing up a porn star, cryptocurrency pusher with an OnlyFans up on stage to talk at convention is not the moderate thing to do. Don't yell about it to the politicians. You got to go out there and change the people's minds. And you got to start, and that's about getting involved. I mean, and we saw this on the right before, and as evidence of it, you have the Tea Party. The Tea Party came along, well-funded, well-organized, not super well-funded, but well-organized, got work done, went to the people of convincing the people. And we ended up getting people like Rand Paul out of it and Thomas Massie. And the reason why Thomas Massie and Rand Paul could win on their ideas is because the Tea Party movement went out there and convinced people that their ideas are what we needed. Which goes back to my point on the platform. We should not be changing the platform to meet the people. We should be pointing out that you hate the left because of these baseline ideas. You dislike them. They're leading us in the wrong direction. They spend too much. They're too involved in your lives. And it's because of these core principles they have. So we're not going to adopt those core principles light. We're going to take the polar opposite position. And when you see that your lives are better under our ideas than theirs, that's how you'll vote for us. That's how you'll continue to vote for us. That's how we'll continue to win. And if we're not winning elections, then we need to go out there and convince people individually through ad campaigns, through knocking, to our ideas, not demand a politician who literally has a couple of months to win an election that somehow they should convince the populace to believe in something that they think. Anyways, that's all I had on national politics. I'll probably be the last to talk about national politics this week. We'll dig back into Kentucky things for the rest of the week, and kicking us off, Fayette County Public Schools there in Lexington. You guys may remember, I reported on this. They actually cut at Cassidy Elementary the art program because they just didn't have the funding for it, according to them. They couldn't do it anymore. And I pointed out at the time that it's surprising they don't have the funding for things like art classes when they waste money on all kinds of things. And I pointed out, like, for an example, the superintendent having a personal wellness coach and a number of other things. And as evidence of just the extreme problem with spending, we see here from an open records request that the Fayette County Public Schools is paying Ron Clark, and I'll go into who that is here in a second, Ron Clark to $26,500. That's right, $26,500 to come do the keynote address at their first day training for the teachers. So they're having their district-wide conference for all the teachers and all the employees of Fayette County Public Schools, and they're paying for, I would assume, a couple hours speech. Ron Clark, $26,500. Now, that would go a long way to funding an art program at Cassidy Elementary, but they'd rather go ahead and give it to Ron Clark than give it to the kids because, they believe that Ron Clark, for some reason, is going to convince all these teachers that just in a few hours speech, somehow they're going to get $26,500 worth of value out of it to the students. So you would be asking, well, who's Ron Clark then? Well, funny enough, there was a made-for-TV movie starring Matthew Perry about Ron Clark called The Story of Ron Clark. And basically, he was an elementary school teacher in nice community, and he decided to move to New York City and work with the worst and hardest to work with kids and try to teach them how to learn, right? Just kind of like Stand and Deliver, I believe is that movie. Similar situation. And through that, he won Teacher of the Year, and he created some programming. And after he won Teacher of the Year and kind of discovered what was working with these kids, he went on to found the Ron Clark Academy, where they take in a select group of kids that they interview and get to deny kids too. So they bring in, it's a private nonprofit school that gets to pick and choose their kids they bring in, and then they teach them through like song and music and excitement. The entire idea behind it is that, you got to be exciting and energetic, and in turn, your kids will be excited and energetic, and they'll want to learn. And so they're going to learn, and they're going to do better than they would under our current system. And a part of that academy, teachers can come and watch the classes go on and learn from the classes to then turn around and bring that back to their schools. And so they're paying this guy to come in and talk. And what's fascinating is right now there's a big fight going on over school choice in Kentucky. I know some of you may be aware of. And nonprofit schools, privately run outside of a typical control of the school board, well, those are called charter schools. Now, I don't believe the Ron Clark Academy is exactly a charter school. I don't know if they're necessarily chartered with the school district. Probably not, because they get to pick and choose who they want coming in, while a charter school has to do a lottery system. But it's just fascinating to see them spend $26,500 to bring in a guy who basically is supportive of school choice in such a way. I mean, he will tell you that the government gets in the way, and teachers need to be free to teach how they want to teach. Schools need to be free to allow teachers to teach how they want to teach. And the quickest and easiest way to break free of that bureaucracy for your students to all have those opportunities would be school choice. And so they're bringing Ron Clark to basically give a pro school choice pitch. And I just think it's really, really ironic. Well, I promised I would be covering some more races going on in our state legislature. I know I took last episode and a lot of this episode to go ahead and cover some national politics issues. So real quick, we'll go through three more of these House races that are going on so we can go ahead and deal with them and point out exactly everything going on. So starting off here, we'll start off with Linda Edwards running against Chris Freeland. Linda Edwards doesn't really have a campaign website, and by doesn't really have, I don't see it anywhere. She does have a campaign Facebook. The campaign Facebook has not made a post since the 9th of July. For those of you, that's 7 days ago. So 7 days ago, it made its last post. And then before that, the last post it made before that was the 14th of June. 14th of June. So not exactly super active, though she does have a personal Facebook page full of Project 2025 postings. Funny enough, since Trump, there's an assassination attempt on Trump's life, she hasn't posted a single thing about that. What's also interesting about Linda Edwards running there in the 6th House District against Chris Freeland, that's down in the Paducah area. She actually has ran for that seat before and actually lost by just 10 or 20 votes to Al Cunningham, who she ran against in the primary. She lost by 31 votes to Al Cunningham, who then Al Cunningham went on to lose to Chris Freeland by 28 to 71. So I guess she thinks she'll do better than the guy she lost to 4 years ago in this election. Thinks she'll be able to pull it off. I don't know about that, but we'll see what happens here. I think it's kind of DOA. I think she knows it too. That's why she didn't even bother spending time building a website. Why bother building a website for a losing candidate? I understand the thought process. In the same thought as losing candidates, we have Twyla Dillard running against Marion Dorsett in District 9, which is out in Hopkinsville area. Marion Dorsett, the Republican incumbent, he's been in office since 2007, his last election where he was actually challenged. In 2022, he was challenged by a Bianca Crockham. He won with 68.6% of the vote. The last time before that he was challenged was 2018 by William Coleman. He won 69.8% of the vote. Myron did. And so, he's just kind of blown all the Democrats out of the water. But, Twyla Dillard is stepping up to the plate. Twyla has no official campaign page whatsoever. Does have a Facebook page, however. And when we take a look at that personal Facebook page, we see also nothing about Donald Trump's assassination, of course, we see a whole lot of posts going on, just like little pictures with little inspirational messages, nothing really political. So as we talk here, I have no idea what Twyla believes in because she never states it. So I guess we'll go with Myron. At least we know what he believes in. And plus, she's really not much of competition in the first place. And I say that to say that those two specifically, when I talk about the Democrats going out here and recruiting candidates, if you're going to run in races, run in serious races with serious candidates. Like I said this the last time I talked about this, I'll never understand people who run for office that know like, oh, you're going to lose. Like, you're just going to lose. The next one to look at is District 10. Speaking of people who are going to lose, that's John Whipple taking on incumbent Josh Callaway. That's more in the Hardin County area. John Whipple at least does have a campaign Facebook page. That's something to go with there. He has won against Josh Callaway in the past. He was a write-in candidate in 2022. He got 135 of the votes there. He ran on the ballot as an independent in 2020 for state senate against Stephen Meredith. He got 10.8% of the vote. I guess he's decided to go ahead, change his registration, run as a Democrat. That is a little bit of an interesting race just because you do have Julie Cantwell, who got 21% of the vote to Josh Callaway's 79% of the vote in the Republican primary. And Julie has some heartburn over that. Obviously, it's never, you don't want to lose ever. And so she's pretty upset that she lost there. You could see her throwing her weight behind John Whipple. I believe she is. I could be mistaken. I've noticed people circulating posts. I don't know if I've seen on actually Julie's Facebook, but pictures and posts where she's attending fundraisers for Democrats and everything else. And so, that's an issue that could come up in that race, but still she only got 738 votes. So considering that last time around, Josh Callaway won 11,516 votes against John Whipple, to John Whipple's 135. Now, he was running as a write-in, so he'll probably pick up a fair amount more, probably more like a 70-30 split or so. But I don't think the 738 votes that Julie Cantwell may try to take away from Josh Callaway that could have potentially went to him will really make much of a difference. So that's what we have going on elections. Join us back here tomorrow. I'll go over a few more. I just think it's important to just kind of work through the elections where there's challengers and talk through those races, see how they're going to turn out. So far, nothing too earth-shattering, just a bunch of cruddy Democrat candidates that, not post about Project 2025, but and talk about all kinds of crazy conspiracies, but none of them seem to have come out yet. I haven't seen one yet come out and say anything about Trump's assassination attempt, which tells you something, right? I mean, you're in Kentucky, you're in these districts, you would at least, if you want to have a chance, have to say you're supporting Trump, I guess. You'd think so as a Democrat. I mean, that's kind of a little bit of the game that Bashir played. He was real iffy on Trump during the election. You think they'd take a note out of the book, but they can't do it. They're too far left. Well, y'all, that's what we got time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. I thank you all so much for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow. Hope you have a great rest of your day.